So welcome to Mentality Meets. My name is Peter Larkum and I created Mentality to try and reach out to everybody. Now, I believe everybody has a journey of mental health, whether you're in good mental health or poor mental health. And Mentality is a base knowledge of mental health. So as we can understand where our normal level is, so as we can begin to understand when things start to change. Now, the important thing is that we are in a situation at the moment where more people are experiencing mental health in a negative context. Yet they may not realize it, they may not know how to check in with themselves. And so this is what Mentality is all about. And I would like to encourage you to go and have a look. The website is www.mentality.work. You can buy it for yourself. It's 1 hour, 20 minutes. What do I notice in other people? Especially when we're having these face-to-face conversations. Question number 2, what do I see in myself? And then question number 3, where do we get the help and support? So we're about to have our next Mentality Meets with Adrian Garcia today. So people are already queuing up, so I should probably let people in. I hope you enjoy it. Fantastic. If you can hear me, give me a wave. That'd be lovely. So Adrian, I'm just going to unmute you. So can you say hello?
Hello, how are you?
Brilliant. So that's you working as well. So first and foremost, can you all get onto your chats and give me a name and where in the world you are currently listening in from? It's probably just down the road, so nothing too exciting. I'm in Winchester, which is, at the moment is pretty sunny. It was a little bit drizzly this morning, and I was a little bit panicked that we wouldn't be able to get outside, but it seems to be clearing up. So where are you from? So Danny, we've got Danny in London, Henry in Walthamstow, Marshall in Manchester, Melissa in Marlow, Chandy in Bournemouth, Joe in Oxfordshire, and there are more people kind of wanting to get in. I should probably focus in on this. The professionalism of myself in the context of this is absolutely outstanding. So welcome everybody. So Adrian, while people are still logging themselves in and while we kind of get into the pattern of this, can you just give us a
San Francisco, that's pretty good.
An intro to yourself? So who are you and how are you connected to me, I suppose, which is in essence is through Speakers Collective. And so if you can give us a little bit of information about Speakers Collective as well, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for chatting to me on what is in Bethnal Green, a very rainy morning. Yeah, I think, well, I think the best description of myself I can possibly find is that I just spent a whole 5 minutes in my kitchen looking for a teacup that didn't have a rude word on it. So that says everything, to be honest. Yeah, as you said, I'm Adrian Garcia. I am a mental health speaker and campaigner and consultant, and I've been in the mental health world, in and out of charities and doing things for myself for about 6 years. I am a founding member of the Speakers Collective, which is a group of, I think Joe's on the call, so she's going to correct my number probably, but I think it's about 50-something mental health speakers in the UK. The whole purpose of the organisation is so that we're sort of all connected, we know what each other are doing, we are able to support each other and sort of go forward together and stronger rather than doing our own work sort of alone. But it also means that we can all sort of vouch for each other, and we all know that, you know, we've all seen each other speak, and we all know that all of us are great, so that when people do want a speaker or a consultant, they can come to us and know that we're all vouched for by quite a lot of different people within the industry.
Thank you. So I mean, kind of this time is for people just to kind of click in and connect, really, because there's a lot of chat going on at the moment, and precursoring to these sessions, I always have a conversation with the speaker that I'm with before we start, and we were talking about the work colleagues who have been in this now for, well, for me it's 3 weeks, entering into 3rd week of lockdown from schools, but my work started to shut down from the beginning of March. So just that kind of level of fatigue, and I think we're chatting about this weekend and everyone out in the parks, and that feeling of what is it, and I think you said it really well, which was that if if the inevitable, or what feels like the inevitable, is that lockdown is going to tighten in, it just seems like it's people's natural response to go, you know what, I just need to get out for almost one last hurrah. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, completely. And I, much like most of my life, to be honest, but at the moment I'm sort of feeling so many different emotions all at the same time, and I'm trying to sort of make them logical. So obviously I've got, who I think you've met, I've got quite a large dog who needs walking, etc. And you know, when I go to the park and I see people sunbathing and I see people having picnics, my first thing is I'm so angry. Like, why are you here? Not only are you potentially spreading a virus that is causing sort of a huge amount of deaths, etc., but more selfishly, you are prolonging my lockdown. So, but then on the other hand, you know, I think I was saying to a friend the other day, because in one of the parks near me, the other night, a group of 16-year-olds, must have been about 40 of them, decided to have a rave, and they were all having their spliffs and their beers and whatever. And the police came within 2 minutes and shut it down. But for those 2 minutes, it looked like they were having fun. And you know, my initial response was, "I'm so angry with you. What are you doing? Do you not read the news?" And then I thought, when I was 16, I totally would have been there. Oh my God! Yeah. If you texted me being like, "You've got an opportunity to go out and have fun with your friends rather than stay in with your parents," I would have been there. And like, you know, there has to be a bit of empathy. So as you say, you know, these people sunbathing, these people sort of unnecessarily being outside, it is such a British thing, isn't it? It's like, we're basically being told that today could be the announcement that you can't leave your house. So before the announcement happens, let's all go, let's do it. So it is natural.
Yes, I find myself, question out to anyone else. Does anyone else find themselves frowning at people in their cars? When I go out for my walk with my kids and we walk down the road and people are driving past, I don't mean to, but I find myself kind of glaring at them as they go past. And I don't think that's really right. Does anyone else do that, or is that just me? Go on, let me know. And also, I've got Rafe in San Francisco. Rafe, that's awesome if you are in San Francisco. I just have no way of knowing. So welcome if you're in San Francisco or not. Because let's face it, you could say that you're anywhere in the world, and I would simply believe you. But welcome if you are in San Francisco. So thanks for joining us. I'd also love to know how you heard about this, if you are from San Francisco. So Marsha says that she's in her 4th week and has only managed to leave the house once. Wow, Marsha, that sounds really hard and really tough, and just kind of getting used to it. So Andrea, another question, or what I also need to do is just a little bit of ground rules. I haven't done the ground rules today, so sorry. We have no idea about who you are. Okay, we have no idea what your personal journey is in the context of your mental health. My personal belief is that more people now will be experiencing a negative side of their mental health. And for most of us, we've never come to that place before. So a couple of things to be aware of. If this becomes more vulnerable and more personal than you're expecting it to be, please let me know, either on the personal chat, so private chat, you can message me directly, so as I can get back in contact with you and try and get you some other help and support. Things that are available. So there's the Hub of Hope, and we've mentioned this in every speaker's Mentality Meets sessions, because Hub of Hope is an amazing website. You can go onto the website and you can type your postcode and it will bring up the mental health provision that you have in your area. Now, if you are supporting someone who is living away from you and you're like, we really need to get them some help, you can put their postcode in and it will show you all the support that's around them. So it's a fantastic website to be available. Also, you have access to the Samaritans, which is 116123, and also Shout. So Shout is the UK's first 24/7 text service for mental health. And you can shout 85258. So text Shout to 85258 and somebody will get back in contact with you to talk with you about how you're doing at that time. So sorry, that's the kind of guideline. So if you need extra help and support or need to go and talk to someone, please do. So Adrian, another question that I have for you, and also for anyone else who's out there, if you are finding that, because I've watched a lot of, or listened to a lot of podcasts at the moment about how do you keep your team engaged? How do you connect with them? And so there's been lots about kind of staying connected, having these face-to-face chats and saying, how are you? And being honest and being real with it. But a question I have for you, Adrian, is it's very easy for me to say I'm okay if I've not really thought about it. So how do we, the question is, how do we begin to encourage our teams and the people that we work with and the people that we are connected to really think about how they're getting on? Any ideas of how, or tips, top tips?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this is one of the many things that is coming up because of coronavirus, but is actually completely makes coronavirus irrelevant, because I think it's a genuine question for always, not just for right now. We do have a sort of knee-jerk response to say, yeah, fine, yeah, good. And even I've been telling people to open up for 6 years, and still when you ask me how I am, I'm going to be like, yeah, great, thanks. I think that, there's a lot more value in sort of listening to people than there is in asking them questions, in a way. And it seems like a really obvious thing, I guess, but you need to, in whatever way that you can find, you need to make sure that people know that they're being listened to. And often therapists use various different tricks, even just staying silent for a bit longer than is comfortable. So, even after someone has said, yeah, fine, just don't talk for a few seconds, because then they will feel the need to fill the void. And, if you're unexpectedly having to speak, then you might be more honest or something like that. But I think establishing a safe space for listening is so important and so easy to do with your friends, your colleagues, your families. It's just that people don't do it as often as they might. So one thing that I've established with a few of my friends, which I think everyone on the call and you should establish if you haven't already, and I know that we do it at the Speakers Collective as well, is genuinely having a few minutes where it's okay, complete non-judgmental talk about what's worrying you, and not how are you, tell me about your bad stuff. I'm going to go straight into what's the bad stuff, what's the good stuff, what are you looking forward to? That's what we did at the Speakers Collective. That's what I'm doing with a few of my friends. I also, one of the things that I've established with a couple of people has been a sort of, let's not think about the people who are worse off than us. Let's not think about the vulnerable old lady across the road. Let's not think about all of the people who have a worse life than you right now because or despite coronavirus. Right now, you are in a really unfair situation. Work is hard. You are alone. You are isolating. You cannot choose who you want to see. I don't care how nice your flat is. I don't care, how many tins of tuna you manage to stockpile. You're in a bad situation. Scream if you want. Tell me how unfair that is for you. And don't do the British thing of yeah, no, despite everything, it's okay for me, compared to other people. Don't compare. Tell me about everything that's annoying you right now.
It's a really, it is, sorry. Oh, that's embarrassing. But it is a real, I don't know whether it's a British thing or whether it's a people thing, where there's that age-old phrase of there is somebody in the world in a worse place than you are. And almost kind of saying, you've always got to be positive. You've always got to think about the good stuff. You've always got to, and the thing is that we promote that in the context of our mental health. We promote the focusing in on the good stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think we've got to acknowledge that, like you're saying, is actually, yes, I do have a nice house. Yes, I do have a back garden, and lots of people don't. But actually, this is still a weird situation. Mm-hmm. And this isn't my normal. So 4 weeks ago, this is not what I would have been doing. And allowing ourselves to acknowledge that actually we are in a different place. And I think sometimes we can silver line it almost to a point of it becoming a lie.
Yeah.
Is that too hard, too strong?
No, I think that's right on the money, to be honest. Yeah, because I don't know, it's sort of, I'm going to sound incredibly sort of hippie socialist at the moment, but we do fall back on describing our lives by our surroundings and material possessions and things that we get to do, etc., which is fine, but it means that, you know, for me, it's just yet another way that we can get away from describing what's in our minds.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of, if you take, you know, a standard person who happens to be in therapy, etc., ask any of your friends who are in therapy, or you know, people who you know, generally they'll say just like, yes, I've had 9-10 weeks of therapy and we really got into something this week for the first time. And it's just like, well, that's because you're so used to not looking inside yourself, you don't know how to do it. And you're so used to, you know, everything's fine. Most people will tell a therapist the first 3 or 4 sessions that they're doing all right, despite the fact that they are paying someone because they're not doing all right. So, you know, it's very weird. I think that, you know, this may well be one of the big learnings that comes out of all of our isolation, because one of the really important things that we need to do is not only know optimism and know how to get out of our slumps, etc., we need to know how to sit with them as well.
Yes.
You're never going to go through a long-term recovery period without knowing what you're recovering from. That's the absolute truth.
I think that's so true. And I'm just kind of going back over the chat. So Melissa, I want to unmute you, if I may, because what you've put on here is about the worry, and I feel this too, about the worry that there's an expectation that it's gonna be fine next week, and we're all going to be back to what we're doing. And why does that concern you?
Well, I just had, funny enough, had a Zoom meeting this morning with a few contacts of mine, and just in the wider community of friends and so forth as well. And, you know, it is the wonderful word that's being used all the time is we're in unprecedented times. Yes, we're all understanding that. And, you know, we're thrown into this confusion and shock of what is around the corner, because actually we don't have a definite answer for sure. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. And it seems that there's a hope, which you can obviously understand, that give it a few months or so, there will be going back to normality, i.e. I've had people saying, you know, hopefully the children will be back in at school by about June time, and I can carry on with work and focus again, or talking about holidays happening in August. And I sit with that and I hear what they're saying and I can understand it. What concerns me, and it's reading between the lines as well in how they're expressing their hopes and desires, is that if that doesn't happen, then what? Because it's almost like they're holding out for that time.
Yes.
For me personally, as difficult as it all is, and how everybody is managing in their own way, I have had this mindset. I don't know why, but right from the early stages of all of this, I've had a sense that, you know, it's going to go on for a really, really long time. And for me to manage it, my outlook is thinking that 2020 is going to be very unique. And it's something that is not going to get back on track very easily because of the knock-on effect. Even when we do start to go back to somehow getting out and about and getting back to some form of new normal as well, it's going to take time. And I would rather prepare longer term, much longer, and then if it happens sooner, great, than having like an end date and then actually the realization that, wow, this is really actually going to go on for much longer than maybe I had anticipated, and that's really hard to manage for many. I can understand that.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was my thoughts on that.
Melissa, I've got a question for you, because I think while I completely agree with you, I often agree with a lot of opinions that I don't end up enacting in my own life. And I think all of us can say we've told other people about self-care tips that we haven't actually done ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, I was told by someone recently as a piece of advice for this situation.
Yeah.
Prepare for it like it's permanent. Not like it's long term, like it's permanent. This is your new life.
Yeah.
And then if it changes, then you change at that point. Would you say that is good advice?
I wouldn't necessarily go with it as a set ground ruling, actually, because what I for me, as I say, I'm preparing longer term, and to say that it's permanent, who knows what is permanent right now? I mean, there are so many things up in the air. Someone's made the comment earlier. I think we can only but take things day by day in knowing definitely what's happening. Long term, it is a real unknown entity.
Yes.
But what I do think right now is that it's definitely not going to go back to the normal of what we all know. So it's trying to manage this unknowing world that we're in right now as best as we can do. And what is determined as permanent, I definitely can't decipher that.
No, totally. I think there's another comment that's come through from Andrew. And Andrew, sorry, because of time, I just want to kind of focus in on this. But it says, this is a game changer, and that things aren't going to go back to the same. And Adrian, when we were talking earlier, you said there's another element that is a little bit of a concern, and that I think people need to be aware of, which is actually we are going through a transition to lockdown. And we will need to go through a transition when lockdown releases. And so being able to support people, I suppose, in both of those transitions, and we don't know when that lockdown is going to get lifted. And Emmy says that it's becoming much bigger. It's beginning to show up in your dreams and in your sleep. Light sleep patterns, disturbed sleep patterns, and other things like that. And Fran, thanks for your comment, because there is just so much in flux. And yet Henry, on the other hand, saying, I'm feeling more in control than ever, because the boundaries are now so firm and so clear that it's easier to operate within it. And so it is affecting everybody so differently.
I think Henry's right on the money there, to be honest, because we were talking about how this isn't going to be one transition, it's two transitions, right? So if there's a magic journalist at some point who suddenly publishes on the BBC that viruses don't exist anymore and you can all go back to the pub, like how do we manage that? But what I find interesting is right now what we think is we're transitioning into an unknown, but that is entirely not true. We know exactly what we're transitioning into because we've seen other countries do it before. It's full lockdown. There's going to be military on the streets. You're not going to be able to leave your house. It's happening slower here than in other countries, but that's what we're going towards. The unknown is how we deal with it, not what we're going towards. But the second transition out of this, we've been, as a speakers collective and as a group of friends and families, etc., we've been talking about how the world's never going to be the same again. Those aren't just sort of cheap words. Like, we don't actually know what the next transition is into. We're transitioning into a world where a lot of us will be doing very different work. We'll be doing the work very differently. We certainly won't be traveling into Shoreditch to go into a temporary WeWork office because it's just, we've realized that that's not necessary anymore. In terms of what Henry's saying, just like actually the boundaries are set right now. Like, so yes. The next transition is the weirder one, maybe.
I suppose kind of another question is about people who are struggling with their mental health. So who have either experienced mental health illnesses in the past, and this current situation has created a relapse because of a sudden shift of norm, a change in their reality, really. But also for others. So people who have never experienced mental health illnesses. And so I come to the mental health story journey as a trainer. So I don't have a history of mental health illnesses, but I do train about it a lot to a lot of people. And like Emmy was saying, is that I'm noticing that it is impacting on my dreams. It's impacting on just how exhausted I am the whole time, and looking after kids and everything else like that. But when we kind of chatted a little bit about this before, and I said, are people who have a history of mental health illnesses among the privileged few? And you said privilege is probably not the right word. But the fact that you have experienced it before and you've had a journey of recovery, and you know that recovery is possible.
Yeah.
Because for others who are
yeah.
experiencing this for the first time, this is a whole heap of scary. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's a whole heap of scary for everyone, to be honest. And however many or few diagnoses that a GP has given you, and however many times you've suffered before, each time that you go into a bad place is a bloody bad place. You don't suddenly get to a point where it's just like, oh look, depression's back. Hey.
Oh joy.
Yeah, exactly. But it is. I am finding a lot of my friends who have sort of been suffering long term with whatever it is, rather than saying this is really scary, I don't know this, I don't know how to navigate it. I am finding people saying, oh, my OCD is really acting up right now, and there is knowledge through history there. So privilege is, as I said before, maybe a strong word, but it is sort of, there's knowledge of how to deal with that there. I also think there is for people who are really struggling, it's often been a huge help to know that you're not alone. There are other people, there are other testimonials, there are other people you can talk to, etc.
Yes.
We're in a completely unprecedented time where I suffer with a few mental health problems, especially sort of anxiety related ones, horrifically at times. And now I'm in a place where it's not, I know there are other people with anxiety. It's, I know the rest of the world is feeling what I feel. It's weird. And it's kind of weirdly empowering, like in a very, very childish way. Like, I was there first, guys. I was there first. But it is, I can share what I'm doing in my recovery, and I can share my top tips with anyone who I speak to, because everyone is in need of it right now.
Yes.
Which I really don't want to phrase that as an advantage, because we're actually in a really negative spot, but there is this sort of weird camaraderie with 7 billion other people right now that I don't normally feel, which is bizarre, but like there are silver linings for sure.
Yes. So Steve's just put on the chat, in a way I've been feeling like, welcome to my world, for those who have never suffered with severe anxiety but who are struggling now. But what he's then kind of put is that actually it allows me to empathize. And I found that I'm actually needed more than ever. And I think people who have a history of mental health illnesses need to somehow find a confidence to begin to share their story more. Mm-hmm. And it's not to kind of go, oh, I know all the answers, because that's not it. But it is to say, I've been there, I've had a journey, the journey has a silver ending, and there is recovery possible. And now in the context of mental health illnesses, we've got to understand recovery is not diagnosis free. Recovery is not symptom free. Recovery is about having more good days than bad, because we all have good and bad days. But when bad days begin to overtake us and begin to become more bad days than good, that's when we're struggling with our mental health. And the interesting thing is that more people are beginning to realize that this current lockdown is having a negative pull on their emotional mental state. And actually it's about how do we push people back to finding those good days again.
Yeah. One interesting thing, and I completely agree with you on the sort of your definition of recovery for sure. But I had a few days ago, someone was asking how I was, and the sort of, I don't know if anyone else on the call gets this, but when people know that you've got mental illness, they ask you how you are by tilting their head and saying, "How are you?" Thinking it's very meaningful. But anyway, I responded without even thinking, basically the same as usual, but with more reasons this time. And that actually in itself felt like recovery, because I'm having an anxiety response like anyone else would. But this time there are triggers to it rather than just waking up feeling like that. So it almost felt like a really good day because I've got reasons to feel anxious today. It's just a weird thing, but it is how it is, isn't it?
So Adrian, we are now at 11:30. Time has totally overtaken me today. So I do apologise, because we haven't even done any real kind of question and answers. So if you do need to log off, now is your time. So we do kind of say that this is a 3 till 3:30 thing. And if you need to log off, then that is absolutely fine. If you want to stick around, we've got about another 9 minutes on the timer, because I was also running late in actually kicking this session off, so I apologise for that as well. So we do have a little bit more time. So Adrian, any kind of final wrapping up thoughts in the context of how do we support our teams? How do we encourage people to be more real with themselves, to focus on how they really are? Not that nice British, I'm fine, everything's kind of as it is. There are other people in the world who have got it worse, so let's kind of be all happy and dandy, but actually to really acknowledge, how are you? Okay. And kind of, so I'm just going to go about, how do companies help their staff identify this? This is important for me because a lot of people are looking for their companies to get them help and support, which I find interesting because we need to take control of our own mental health, but that's a conversation for another time. And how do we encourage people who are new to this mental health journey and the negative side of things, and how do we begin to encourage them? So people in workforce, making it real, and people who are struggling for the first time ever with their mental health. Round up thoughts.
Round up. I'm just going to solve mental health in 30 seconds, if that's okay. I think people need to understand that they can take time for themselves, but not only that they can, that they have to. That it's absolutely vital, and there is a time every day that is completely Peter's time, and like, you don't need to think about anyone else, you don't need to think about what people might think of you, etc. People who've been in therapy for a long time or have been practicing mindfulness for a long time or whatever it is know this, but that is a minority of people. And yeah, as I was saying before, we're in a really unfair situation. Spend 5 minutes a day calling a friend saying, I hate this. Not Pat next door is vulnerable. You're vulnerable. You're alone. You don't know how to handle this. Do it, because actually it's one of the best ways to actually figure out how to spend your days and how to organize yourself. You know, get the bad stuff out first over a cup of tea in the morning, and then everything else falls into place. In terms of companies, it's exactly the same advice, and this is relevant for every company in any time. None of your employees are that number at the end of their sort of unique code in the HR system. They're just not. None of your employees are there just to fulfill some menial role. They are not the jobs that they do. They are humans, and they need to be recognized as such. When you have a one-on-one with a manager, that one-on-one should be a deep dive into how are you? How do you feel about your job? How do you feel about this company? What can you do to contribute to the wider team? It should never be how your sales targets, what your numbers like, etc., because that's incredibly impersonal. And I think now, you know, it's not even more important now than it always was. It's always been important, but hey, we're going through a period of change, so change it now. You know, we're all speaking on Zoom. When you ask someone how they are, actually ask them. It's not just the thing you say after hello.
Yeah. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's probably a good rounding up statement. Ask people how they're getting on. Allow them to be honest, allow them to be raw, and allow them to be real. Adrian, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope everyone else has enjoyed it. But this is the opportunity for us to say thank you so much for joining us. It is time to log off. So take care. God bless. Bye-bye now.